Welcome to the Kitcast by Hull City Kits, where we take an in-depth look at Tigers apparel past and present, but also monitor the wider kit universe goings on. This episode is a Poppy shirt special. When City wore Poppy appliques on their shirts in 2 games in November, it was the 10th time we'd visually marked a game near to Remembrance Day. And since those shirts have since been auctioned recently, now seems an apt time to look back on the 10 shirts we've used. I'm Les, and joining me again is fellow Match One shirt collector Adam Shearsmith. How goes it, Adam?
Good, well, thanks.
So before we dive headlong into Poppy recollection, there's time to consider some kit news. What's grabbed your attention, Adam?
Stoke doing a really good part for the Gordon Banks Memorial with the Jack Butland shirt was really good. Really nice touch by them for such a legend of the game. So yeah, that one was a nice bit of kit news.
Yeah, it was a very classy shirt. I thought what was unusual is though, given that there was no sponsor, there was no sleeve patches, I wonder why they used the league's font for the number.
Yeah.
It just looked a little bit egregious when everything else looked spot on.
Yeah.
I wonder if the league didn't allow them to just have a very simple one.
Possibly, yeah.
Manchester City have gone to Puma. They'll start with the German brand next season. And it doesn't just cover Manchester City, it also covers 4 clubs that are part of the City group. What's your thoughts on this one?
I'm not the biggest fan of Puma. I think they massacred Arsenal shirts for the seasons that they did those. They're just not nice shirts. They don't seem to do anything that's eye-catching. It just seems to be very dull and a bit samey for everything.
Yeah, I think we're in violent agreement about our disdain for Puma. You can always tell a Puma shirt, and so from a branding point of view, perhaps that's a good thing that you can instantly tell it's a Puma shirt, but I always think their stuff looks too thin and a little bit cheap. So I think it's an interesting one. Certainly Puma are clawing themselves back into the game. For many years, they'd sort of lost ground to Nike and Adidas.
Yeah.
They're certainly making big strides into having like a big team in each of the leagues. So they've got Manchester City in the Premier League, Dortmund, they've got Milan. So they're certainly making a bit of a comeback. We'll see how that works out.
Speaking of comebacks, Monaco with Kappa, which I'm quite excited about. I really liked the Monaco shirts with Kappa in the past, so I'm hoping this one's going to be a really nice start again for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some clubs where as soon as you say the club and you then think of kits, there's certain brands you think of, and I think Monaco and Kappa goes absolutely hand in glove, so it'd be fascinating to see what they do with that. Yeah. There was a study conducted by the University of Sheffield about the culture change that happened when replica shirts went from children's sportswear to adult leisure wear. And it's an absolutely fascinating read. We'll tweet about it so that you've got the link, but it's written by a chap called Dr. Chris Stride, and I massively recommend it. It's a really interesting read.
Also, in good news, the tiger print shirts on eBay that are selling for just ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah, there's definitely been an upward trend in the prices. I mean, for a few years, there's been people asking 200, 250, but generally people haven't really paid it. But there's been some shirts that recently. So the one you're referring to is the tiger print shirt that went for £384. That's nearly £400 for what is ultimately a replica.
Yeah, it's just obscene amounts of money for a replica shirt, I think.
I'm fascinated to know what's driving that. Could be us.
Yeah, hopefully.
Maybe it is. Also, Marcus Dilley, the freelance sportswear designer and one-time Adidas employer, he responded to Hull City changing crests by having a go at one of his own. He was bemoaning the fact that crests are becoming ever simpler, and he still thinks there's room for some ornateness in the design. So the one he's come up with is fascinating, and here's a look at it now. Poppy shirts then. It might feel like they've been around forever, but in reality the practice has only existed for the last decade or so. If we look back at City's first Premier League season, 2008-2009, there was no poppy on the shirt of the nearest game to Remembrance Day, which was the game against Bolton. There was a commemorative silence and there was servicemen there with flags, but there was nothing on the shirts. And not many Premier League teams did have them that season. West Brom were a notable example. They wore them against Blackburn on the 1st of November, and they had them auctioned off by the 13th of November. The following weekend, Arsenal played Manchester United, and the home side had poppies on the red shirts, but the away team in blue didn't. The poppies used by West Brom and Arsenal were very different. Arsenal's had 4 leaves, whereas West Brom's were more like the 2-leaf paper versions that you pin to your lapel. But there was no uniformity of the shirt poppy.
The first year City wore poppy shirts was 2009, and it was actually on Remembrance Sunday when we played Stoke and beat them 2-1. It was nice that the poppy's actually embroidered into the shirt. It's not just a heat stickered poppy, and it also had the game detail on the shirt, which is a really nice touch, especially for it being a first one and on Remembrance Sunday as well. It's just a great start for it to be on. There's a shirt from that game.
Thanks to Joe Williams for the loan of the shirt and Catherine Batty for logistical support.
Just a stunning poppy, absolutely stunning poppy. It's, in my eyes, the best one we've ever had. I don't know how you feel about that one.
No, I'm in absolute agreement with that one. We've had 10 iterations of poppy shirts, and this one is the best one that it's applied. It's it just looks really well done and well finished. You can see it on both sides of the shirt. So on the inside of the shirt, there's like a little backing pad so that it doesn't rub. It's really well done. The game detail, it's not something City have done a lot in their when they've had kits, but the game detail's really nice, quite smart. So this shirt itself was issued to Kamil Gilas. He was an unused substitute that day, but absolutely beautiful shirt. This
stunning shirt.
It's great. It's great to see an example.
Yeah. Well, they're actually eBayed, weren't they? They were auctioned off. Some of them went for big money. I mean, I think it was around £8,800 that they actually all went for in total, which is just fantastic for the charity that they went to. So, top marks to everybody that actually got their hands on one. I mean, Bullard went for, was it?
It went for £1,041. This was the most expensive. I do wonder if the person who bought that's got buyer's remorse. If you're watching, let us know. There was a proper gum up, but most of them went for over £300. But what was fascinating was the cheapest, which was £310. That was Matt Dukes, and he played the full game. For a tenner less, somebody paid 300 for Tony Warner's, and he was on the bench the entire game. So I think there was a certain novelty about it being the first time City had poppies on the shirts, and people wanted one regardless of who the player was. But it was great to see that much.
Absolutely,
that much money.
Fantastic.
Manchester United and Liverpool didn't have poppies on their shirts that weekend. They gave the rationale that red poppies on red shirts wouldn't be that visible, but it didn't stop the Daily Mail piling in and saying it was Poppygate, it was disrespectful to the war dead, which was really unfair because both clubs marched Remembrance Day and Liverpool auctioned shirts and gave the money to the Royal British Legion. And I think poppy shirts is a net good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the one thing I don't like about it is that people use it to generate fake outrage. And really, poppies it's all about a personal, quiet reflection of the sacrifice of people in conflict. It should never really be a showy display and just look how respectful I am, look how remembering I am, and that's the one element that I do find a little bit frustrating.
I agree totally with
that.
But
the first iteration was absolutely beautiful, and here's a close-up look of what the poppy looked like.
By 2010 November, we were back in the Football League. We actually wore the poppy shirts for a game that was televised on Sky with white shorts against Preston. We won 2-0 that game, and here is one of the shirts. It's a very nice shirt, worn by a very special individual.
Ian Ashby, the captain.
The main man. So we have to say thank you to Gareth Flynn for that one, for letting us borrow that for the day. Stunning shirt again. Now what's interesting is there was actually a bit of uniformity this side, so it wasn't just City that wore this style of applique. Quite a lot of teams use them. Not everyone. Liverpool and Manchester City both stayed with embroidered ones, but it was starting to become a little bit more organised, the wearing of poppies, and so now there was a standard poppy that could be worn if they wanted to. Actually wore a red goalkeeper shirt that day as well.
Yeah, Vito Manone in red. It's the only time he wore a red goalkeeper shirt that season. That shirt is actually available on a dark corner of the internet if you're prepared to pay a ludicrous sum. We'll say no more.
In 2011, City wore poppies for the game against West Ham. Here's one that we have.
So this isn't a match one shirt, this is really just for illustrative purposes. But what's interesting is, again, the poppy was on the left side of the chest because Adidas's logo was centrally placed. Now, John Eyre said that West Ham's kitman asked if we could wear a green goalkeeper shirt instead of blue because he wanted West Ham to use the blue away shirt. Apparently, West Ham's players had been swapping a lot of their home shirts and he was running out, so he thought we'll use the blue, but also the poppy stood out a little bit better than it would on claret.
The actual auctions for these ones, Robert Corran's shirt went for quite a bit of money on that as well, didn't it? But then got relisted. The club had actually put out on Twitter that people that had bought them were time wasters because they hadn't actually paid for them. I think they've got a little bit excited and gone, "Ooh, I'm going to go as high as I can with this," and then realised I don't have this much money to buy a shirt.
I don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on a piece of polyester. Caveat emptor, you know what you're buying. The relisted shirts, there was quite a few. There was Liam Rossini, McKenna, Basso, Brady, Adibola, and of those ones, Liam Rossini's went for 226. They're the most of those ones. So there was a minute's silence before that game, as you'd expect, but also the crew of the HMS Iron Duke, which is a Royal Navy frigate which is affiliated to Hull, they delivered the match ball and they laid wreaths. Here's a photograph from that game.
So 2012 we wore the away shirt, which was the Argentina blue. We had loads of the Argentina blue shirts in stock, so the club used them for the Tash Converters sponsor. They also used them for the poppies, which, brilliant. I've got a real thing for the Argentina blue shirt, so it's my favourite.
You'd like this, wouldn't you?
I would love this shirt.
It's all mine, it's all mine. So Ahmed El Mohammadi wore this in the first half of the Cardiff game. What was interesting about that game was City players was only issued one shirt. So pictures of the game will show some players not wearing a poppy. It's simply because they had one in the first half, but they would have changed shirt at half time. So some players didn't have one in the second half. But yeah, beautiful use of the Argentina blue shirt as a third shirt. It was the previous season's secondary shirt, but used as a third shirt in 2012-13, the promotion season.
And poppies on an away shirt as well the year after. It was on the royal blue shirt, which we lost 4-1 at Southampton in. Yannick scored the goal that day, didn't he, Yannick Sagbo?
He absolutely did, right. So that might explain why Yannick Sagbo's goes for so much.
Yes.
So this isn't a match one shirt, this is just used for illustrative purposes. So the poppy was in the middle because Adidas had gone put their logo back on the breastpiece. These are ludicrously rare. You don't see many City fans owning them, and it's simply because the shirts were batch bought by an American auction warehouse called Nate D. Sanders, and they've been on eBay for 5 years, and the prices are just laughable.
I mean, yeah, Yannick, like I say, he scored the goal, but his is on there for nearly £1,200. Tommy Huddlestone's is on there for £1,500. Nobody's going to pay that price for a shirt from 5-6 years ago. It's just ludicrous what the prices are for them. So
no, can't understand why those shirts aren't selling. No. Why have they been on for eBay for 5 years? No, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
they clearly didn't pay anything like that when they bought them. No idea why they expect to get that much money.
Yeah.
It's simply not going to happen. So interestingly, this was the last time shirts were auctioned by the club, and I do wonder if that might have something to do with it. And it was also the last time that one individual or an organisation could buy pretty much all of the shirts in one go. But here's a picture from the Southampton game where we wore those shirts. In 2014, it was 100 years since the start of the First World War, and there was a bit of a change to the appliques. The poppy was slightly smaller and it had a scroll underneath, and it said 1914 to 2014 football remembers. Tell us something about this shirt, Adam.
This is Brian Lenihan's match issued shirt. It's not a match worn, match issued. Yeah, I got it really, really cheap. Really cheap. That year, nothing went for an awful lot. I don't think any of them went for over £100. I think Stephen Quinn was maybe one of the only ones that did. I think his went for about £138.
Yeah, the Royal British Legion took ownership of auctioning the shirts this time, and a couple of things were strange. Each player had 2 shirts, whereas previously there'd only been 1 shirt issued, and this time there was one over 2 games. So there was the Southampton game and there was the Burnley game. So both games was a defeat, so that didn't set them up to be massively desirable. No. But because there was 2 of each player's shirt, it meant there wasn't any real bidding warfare that you would normally see. You know, one person saying, I'm determined to get Paul McShane's shirt. The fact that there was 2 of them sort of diluted how much they went for.
I mean, Jake Livermore's going for £69 is just an absolute bargain.
It is, and the other reason for that is the Royal British Legion set the auctions to end at 2 in the morning.
I was awake.
Yeah, me too. I set an alarm for it, but you know, most people would have been tucked up in bed on a work night rather than frenziedly trying to get Shoni Aluko's shirt. So that was a real bizarre decision, and it just meant that not many shirts went for more than £100. As you said, Stephen Quinn's 138 and 131. It's odd that Stephen Quinn's shirts went for the most. Very odd. Anyway, City fan Andy Bradley picked up one of the Poppy shirts, and here he is to show it off. So this is Andy Bradley posing very proudly with his Eldin Jakupovic shirt. What appealed to you about this shirt when you first acquired it, Andy?
Well, basically, I'd previously bid on the Tash converters, and they was up for bidding, and I managed to get Eldin's shirt relatively cheap, and I got a Paul McShane one at the same time. So basically, after that, I took it to KC Stadium, and I met Eldin, and we held it up and had a few photographs either side of it. And, it went down really well, and always had a bit of a banter with him, weekly when I saw him. So it just went on from that. When these went up for sale on the website, I just thought I'd have a cheeky little bid.
Fantastic, thank you very much. In 2015, City wore Poppy shirts against Middlesbrough in a 3-0 victory. This is Greg Luer's issued shirt. He didn't play in that game, but the shirt was issued for him. Very nice. So there was a slight difference in the way who people got these shirts from this year.
Sky Bet actually auctioned these ones off. They had the privilege of it this season. And you had to register to get an email to say that when the auction was going to start. So that was quite an interesting way of doing it. We've actually got another shirt from that season. Our friend Mikey Carter has a few Poppy shirts, and 2015 is his favourite. So why don't you tell us about it, Mikey?
Thanks, lads. I have 5 Poppy shirts in my collection, and this one is my favourite. It's David Marler's shirt from the 3-0 win over Middlesbrough in November 2015. It was David Marler's 100th game for Hull City, in which he assisted a goal to Sam Clucas, which was a wayward shot which Sam was nifty enough to pop away. David Marler is a player that I hold with high regard with Hull City. I feel like he was appreciated by some, but underappreciated by most. I feel like his efforts and his endeavour towards the team were absolutely fantastic, and it is something that we do quite miss nowadays. That's my favourite shirt. Now I'm going to pass back over to the lads who are about to cast their eyes over another shirt from my collection, which is Robert Snodgrass's from the 2016 season.
On to 2016, and City were again playing Southampton in a Poppy shirt game. This time City won 2-1 at home. So tell us about this shirt.
Robert Snodgrass shirt. He came off the bench for Will Keane in this game and set up Dawson for his header, and also scored from one of Sam Clucas' corners. So yeah, it's a nice shirt to have.
Sky Bet again were taking care of the auctions for these, and this time there was also 12 match balls that were used in Poppy shirt games that were available for auction too. But here's a picture of Snodgrass in action in that game. Then we arrive at 2017. Now, City took some stick for wearing a Poppy shirt after Remembrance Day, but it's worth pointing out that they weren't the only team to do so. Cardiff and Fulham also wore shirts on the 18th, and the reason City gave, rather than wearing shirts in the away game at Sheffield United when they wore the white away shirt, they said that they wanted to wear the Poppy shirt at home and do their own Remembrance thing. So Adam, show us your shirt.
This is my match one Marcus Henriksen Poppy shirt. So a little bit dirty on there as well. So nice as well.
Dirt.
Yes. It would have been nicer on the white shirt. The white shirts would look great with the poppies on, I think. But I got this one from Charity Stars. It's the first year that the Charity Stars has started doing them. I got it quite cheap as well. I think it was only £82, I think I paid for that one. And it went on the 27th of December that the auction finished. So it was just after Boxing Day. People don't have a lot of money after Christmas, so yeah, I don't think they are.
Charity Stars works a little bit different to eBay. So whereas eBay, there's a fixed expiry time and the biggest bid at that point will win it. Whereas with Charity Stars, every time a higher bid comes in, it extends the auction. So I remember the Alan McGregor shirt was the last shirt to go for sale, and I think anybody who was gutted that they'd missed out on another one all started piling in on that one. So that might have something to do with the fact that McGregor's went for the most amount of money. That went for £430 because the next shirt, in terms of price, was Jared Bowen, and that was 221, so a bit of a considerable difference. So it could have been the functionality of that website that had an impact. The cheapest ones were Olorana and Fikio Tamori, and they went for £70 a piece.
Both lone players though, so that's understandable, I suppose.
And that brings us then to this season. So again, the shirts were auctioned on the Charity Stars website. So the shirts were used in November, but they were auctioned in February. So this shirt then.
Daniel Batty's. So the reason I went for this one is because the number's lower than all the other shirts.
So it's visually distinct?
Yeah, definitely. So I know that it's match worn. Poppy again, nice touch on the front. So yeah. Charity Stars again, like, as you say.
The irritating thing about Charity Stars is that they charge £25 for shipping. Yes. Perhaps that might be explained by the fact that the shirts were sent to people from Milan. You know, Charity Stars are a sort of dual nationality charity, so they're both in Italy and they're in London. But I find it curious that City sent a batch of shirts to the Royal British Legion. The Royal British Legion then send the shirts to Milan in Italy, and the shirts then get posted from Milan here. I'm fairly sure you could offer some cheaper postage if you were just sending them from here, because I think there was only one of the shirts actually went out of the United Kingdom. So in terms of prices, the most expensive was Jared Bowen. That went for £350. Grzycki's shirt went for not much less. That went for £325. But there were some bargains to be had as well. Nwadiko's shirt went for just £95. A couple of shirts went for £95. George Long's keeper shirt, the issued one, that went for £95 too.
Very nice.
So that brings us up to date. That's the whole lot. Give us your feedback. We're on social media at Hull City Kits. So that's Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. We always love it when you send us pictures of your kits, but also if you've got feedback about the Kitcast, anything you'd like to say, do let us know. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.